Thank you, Ken Corley. Ken Corley, I'd like to start by congratulating Deputy Manny McGrath on introducing this bill this morning for second stage. The Scrap and Precious Metal Dealers Bill seems to be eminently sensible. It makes relatively minor changes to the law, but they're very sensible changes, which it seems to me have great potential to reduce illegal activity in the acquisition and trade of scrap and precious metals. On this basis, Ken Corley, I think it is disappointing that the government will not be accepting the bill, though I do note the Minister's comments on the various activities which are taking place, which seem, in fairness to the government, to line up quite nicely, and in fairness to Deputy McGrath, seem to line up quite nicely in terms of appropriate regulation to make it more difficult to acquire and trade in stolen scrap and precious metals. In doing the research for the bill, it became apparent to me very quickly that there is very little data around. I couldn't find any official statistics. I do note the Minister's statistics from the CSO that burglaries have fallen, I believe it was by 7 or 9%, though I think we need to be careful with this kind of analysis. The fact that burglaries have fallen is not necessarily linked in any way to a reduction in the demand or illegal activity relating to scrap or precious metal. So it's fantastic that burglaries have fallen. However, I know the Minister isn't inferring any causal link. In other words, Ken Corley, what I'm saying is, if we can get this kind of regulation right, it seems that we can push down burglaries even further, which obviously is in everybody's interests, or nearly everybody's interests, I guess. In June 2012, the former Garda Commissioner Callanan was speaking about this, and he said the following: "It's difficult to subscribe to the proposition that the increase in cash for gold trading has had an adverse effect on the incidence of burglary offences. That is not to say that outlets which purchase gold do not buy stolen goods." So the Commissioner is saying, look, we can't show a link between the illegal trade in scrap and precious metals and burglaries in the cash for gold shops. However, he said he is certainly not saying that you know, some of these, I'm sure there are some very reputable shops, but some of them don't buy stolen goods. And the former Commissioner's caution is understandable, obviously, but there's certainly a lot of anecdotal evidence. There's been a lot of anecdotal evidence in the media over the last few years about, and both Deputy McGrath and the Minister referred to it, theft of public artwork, theft of public utilities, theft from public buildings, and indeed private buildings. And I'd say every deputy is aware, anecdotally, of things going on in their own constituencies. There's a new bronze statue, very nice piece of artwork, has gone up somewhere in Wicklow. I'll keep the exact location out of the Dáil record, but it's very nice. But one of the sad things was, I was talking to somebody involved who said he was very surprised that the piece had gone up in bronze, because as soon as those who steal these kind of things can figure out how to steal it, they'll steal it, you know? And I thought that was very sad. And he referred me to various pieces of public artwork that had been stolen. And it's because they might be in bronze or the slightly more valuable metals than, say, iron. Last Friday, of course, the Irish Times reported that the Gardai had arrested 27 people. The Gardai in the Metal Theft Forum as part of a pan-European crackdown in stolen goods. So not only do we have a problem in this country, we have a problem across Europe. And after searching 70 premises in Cavan, Dublin and Wicklow, these 27 people were arrested for a variety of offences, including burglary, theft and breaches of the Road Traffic Act. And they were in possession of over 1,000 empty beer kegs. I had to check that the beer kegs were empty. I thought if the headline was UCD Students' Union found in possession of 1,000 beer kegs, it may not be that they were looking to recycle the metal, but it turns out I checked, they were empty beer kegs. So we contacted the Irish Brewers Association, who said that this really is a very serious issue for them. They said it costs about €100 to replace a stolen beer keg, and that since 2007, and that's in and around where we saw the global price of metal begin to go up. And obviously the economic downturn here and in other parts of Europe kicked in 1 year after. So since 2007, where it became more attractive for people to steal and trade in stolen metal like beer kegs, The Irish Brewers Association reckons it's cost them about €40 million. So this is really very serious stuff. These are very, very large numbers. They estimate that over 400,000 beer kegs have been stolen since 2007. So this is obviously not a marginal activity. This is very well organized. These are very, very high numbers with very high returns, obviously, to the criminals involved. Thomas Burke of the Irish Brewers Association said that the Irish Brewers Association would welcome any piece of legislation that would make it more difficult for criminals to trade or sell in stolen beer kegs. He said the trade in stolen beer kegs is a significant criminal enterprise costing their industry large sums annually. And I think Deputy McGrath's bill, and indeed what the Minister has outlined, hopefully will go to alleviating some of those problems. Now, we know in the UK they had a problem too. Just last October, they brought in the Scrap Metal Theft Act. Now, what does the Act do? It aims to clamp down on rogue traders, and specifically, there's three things that I thought it did that were quite interesting. The first is it gives local authorities and the police new powers to inspect premises where they expect this sort of illegal activity is going on. It ensures that scrap and metal dealers will need to apply to their local council for a licence, which obviously is very sensible. And it allows magistrates in the UK to issue fines of up to £5,000 sterling to scrap metal dealers who trade in cash. So some very sensible things there. Now, Deputy McGrath's bill I thought was very sensible as well. I picked out four things that I particularly liked from it. The scrap metal and precious metal dealers have to keep records of who they're dealing with, something which they don't right now and something which will help. Items bought from a vendor have to be retained for 30 days. I think this is particularly good, and I think, even though there's no data, I think would go a long way to assuaging the fears of the average man and woman in their house who hope that their house doesn't get broken into over the summer and that their wedding rings, their gold rings, don't get stolen and taken down to the local cash for gold shop and are shifted sort of 24 hours later. I think having to hold these items for 30 days would really go to the fears of an awful lot of men and women in Ireland. Deputy McGrath's bill also, like the UK bill, introduces the power for the Gardays to inspect premises. And then the fourth point I thought was very useful was that there are obviously fines for non-compliance. So his bill has some important teeth. So while there's no data linking the ease of selling scrap or precious metal to the likelihood that that scrap or precious metal will be stolen, that's the problem here. We can't show a causal link between how easy it is to sell it on and how attractive it is to therefore steal. It seems like pretty common sense, right? And I think Deputy McGrath's bill, and again in fairness to the Minister and to the government, what they are introducing will make that a significantly larger barrier for people who are thinking of selling this stuff and selling it on. You know, I think it's common sense that if a thief can break into a house and put gold rings and jewellery in an envelope and post them off to a fairly anonymous company and have cash posted back to them in return, which is essentially what they can do right now, that's a pretty high incentive for people to knock into a few houses over the summer and steal a bit of gold, stick it in an envelope and get cash back. And I think that's exactly the kind of thing that I really liked about Deputy McGrath's bill, that it would stop that. And again, in fairness to the government, it seems to me that they are certainly making moves in that way. So I'd like to finish, Ceann Comhairle, by congratulating Deputy McGrath again. I think it's an eminently sensible, very proactive piece of legislation on his behalf. And whilst the government have indicated they won't accept it, I hope that they will be looking carefully at what Deputy McGrath is proposing and incorporating it into whatever the government is going to bring before the House. And I hope we see that as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.